Today we're continuing our series on making wise investments. We've already talked about in this series the value of the soul, and then last week the need to buy the truth. Here in our lesson today, we're going to be looking at something Jesus said over in Matthew chapter 13, verses 45 and 46, as he described something that was so valuable that it would be worth it for someone to sell everything they had in order to obtain it. Notice what he says here, Matthew 13, 45 and 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking fine pearls. And upon finding one pearl of great value, he went and sold all that he had and bought it. Here you have in this parable, very short parable, but you have someone who is going out. He's a merchant, so he's used to buying and selling. He understands the value of things. He finds one pearl of great value and recognizes that it is worth more than anything else he could hope to gain. And so he's willing to sell everything he has in order to obtain it. Well, what was Jesus talking about there? Well, he said there in that verse, the kingdom of heaven is like this. The kingdom of heaven is this pearl of great value, or the pearl of great price. When the Bible talks about the kingdom, Jesus' kingdom that he came to establish, this kingdom is described in prophecy in Daniel 2 and verse 44 as one that would be established and would never be destroyed. And the reason why it was able to stand forever is because it's not like the kingdoms that rise and fall here in this world. It was not a physical kingdom. It was a spiritual kingdom. Before his crucifixion, Jesus told Pilate that my kingdom is not of this world in John 18:36. This kingdom that Jesus came to establish, that was going to endure forever, that Jesus said was worth more than anything else, that we have to sell everything that we have to obtain it, it would be worth it. That kingdom is also referred to in other passages as his church. In fact, in Matthew 16, verses 18 and 19, he used the term church and kingdom interchangeably, describing the same institution. He said, I will build my church, and told Peter, I will give you the keys of the kingdom. He was talking about the same entity or the same organization, institution. He would build his church, establish his church, and would give the keys to this kingdom, this church, so that others could be welcomed into it. So you have this kingdom that is never going to be destroyed. And notice what Jesus says here in this parable. You have a merchant who is seeking fine pearls. The Bible talks about the importance of seeking. Jesus said in Matthew 7 and verse 7, if you seek, you will find. Well, here's someone who's seeking something that is of value, and he finds something that is of more value than anything he could hope to obtain. Well, when he finds it, he does whatever he has to do in order to obtain it. How would we know that we found what we're looking for? How would this merchant know that he has found something that's more valuable than anything else he could obtain? He knew the value of these things. He was well acquainted with that. He knew that this pearl, when he found it, was more valuable. Well, how can we identify this pearl of great value today? This church that Jesus established, his kingdom, and that we can be part of today. How do we identify it? Well, what we can do is look to the New Testament and see how his church is described there in the New Testament. And we don't have time to get into all of this today, but I will leave an article down below this video that goes into this in more detail. But it basically comes down to this. We go to his word. We go to the scriptures. We go to the New Testament, and we see what his church looked like, what his church did as far as their work, their teaching, their worship. We see what his church, how it was described in the New Testament. And we find the church that is like that today. Jesus said, if you will seek, you will find. We seek after this kingdom, we find it, and he says, you need to be willing to sell everything that you have in order to obtain it. This pearl of great value. What does he mean by that? He means we need to be willing to give up anything that is necessary in order to be part of his kingdom or part of his church. We need to be willing to give up the comforts of this life because we may have to face persecution for following Jesus. Paul said in Acts 14:22 that it is through many tribulations we enter the kingdom of God. We may have to face hardships. We may have to face difficulties. We may have people who will oppose us and not understand why we are trying to follow the Lord in this way. But we have to put him first. We have to seek his kingdom and put him first. Matthew 6:33 says, seek his kingdom and his righteousness. Seek that first, and then all these things will be added to you. We need to put him first and make sure we find his church that he established. We become part of that kingdom that he set up that will never be destroyed. Because if we do that, we can have an eternal reward. So it's worth anything that we have to give, anything that we need to leave behind in order to be part of that kingdom. So let's be seeking for his church, to be part of his kingdom, so that we can have the rewards that come from that.